Dr. Smetana, turn it over to you.
Good evening. Tonight I'll provide the board with financial information for the month of June, which represents the entire fiscal year. Beginning on board book page 12 is the monthly summary report. You'll see the total operating revenue for the month was $608,600, with 43% coming from food service reimbursement, 31% coming from evidence-based funding, which is our state funding, and 24% coming from local funding, primarily summer programs as well as course fees towards the end of the school year. The total operating expenditures for the month were a little over $3 million, with 53% towards salary and benefits, 16% for special education tuition, and 16% for purchase services, primarily food service for RB, as well as the satellite schools that flows through RB as well. Looking at the next page at the monthly financial statements, you'll see that the fund balance shows that the district ended fiscal year 21 with a surplus of $1,203,864 in its operating funds. And if you go to the next page, you'll see that the summary of revenue shows that the district has received 108.9% of our budgeted revenue for this year, which helps explains the surplus. This percentage equals an additional $2,306,164 in revenue above what we budgeted in the fiscal year. This percent is obviously significantly higher than where we were at this time last fiscal year. I didn't have these numbers available to put in my report, but after receiving and being able to analyze the budget on Monday, I was able to kind of look at the revenue to see where a lot of it was over budget. And $760,000 over budget came from food service reimbursement. That was both from the satellite schools as well as the federal grant that we received. The satellite schools also received the same federal grant, and so obviously their expenditures went up, which came through us, and they reimbursed us in revenue.
And really quickly, that federal grant we only became aware of after the budget was...
Yes, in September. Yeah. And that federal grant too was strictly for food. I know there had been some questions in the community about why aren't we using it for other things, but that was strictly for food service for our students.
Basically in response to COVID, yes?
Correct.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
Yeah.
When does that end, Kristen?
It ends
summer?
August 11th is when we are.
Okay.
Yes.
That's why we've been providing lunches over the summer.
Breakfast and lunches, yes.
Right.
An additional $530,000 of extra revenue came in federal grants from the Digital Equity Grant and ESSER 1 and ESSER 2, which also became available to us after the budget process was completed. So right there alone is $1.3 million in revenue that we wouldn't have been able to predict. Additionally, $410,000 in special ed reimbursement, room and board, came in, and that was room and board and another special ed reimbursement. But a lot of that was due to back payments from the previous fiscal year that we just got this fiscal year. There's always some backlog, but you never know how much. And so that was a significant amount that we hadn't seen in a long time. And then $189,657 in CPPRT. The state provides an estimate every year. The estimate was 320, and we received like 509,000. And so these are things that are outside of our control. So those were certainly the biggest categories. I have other amounts that account for the whole $2.3 million, but those were the significant categories, all of which were out of our control.
I think it's important to just reiterate, almost 1.3 million were from federal dollars and grants that we weren't expecting.
All related to COVID.
Correct.
Right.
COVID relief.
And if you include special ed, which is also federal and state reimbursement, it was 1.7.
Right.
I mean, so it's significant.
It's hard for Kristen and I to do can't predict some of this stuff, when you're going to get paid, what grants are going to become open, when they're going to give you the money, so I think it's important
with the
to just
state of
highlight that.
Illinois notoriously being late with reimbursements, it is very hard to nail it down, right?
Yes.
The special ed is a great example of that.
Mm-hmm. And had those grants come out 2 months earlier, we would have been able to capture them in our budget. So that's unfortunately the timing that occurred.
Do you have the ESSER 3 grant information yet from the state, or is that still pending?
I just got approval and just received the application this week.
Okay.
So that's
So
my
I knew
next
that was
big
a
task,
pending issue.
because ultimately I will have to create new accounts for each grant line item, and so I'll have to throw those into the budget. So you'll see those in the budget
Okay.
in August. Right now they're just included in other accounts.
Gotcha. Okay.
So, yes.
Thanks.
I doubt the chances of that being approved before our September board meeting when we approve the final budget. Close?
Well, I don't know.
I mean, with everybody filling that out, I think it's gonna take a long time.
I'm trying to get it done by the end of this month, so that hopefully we're one of the first in line for approval.
Right.
But yes, we don't
I know you'll be excellent with your, expediting that process. I'm just saying,
We never know how long it takes
Yeah,
for
with
the
the
state.
state.
So
Who's
it's
gonna be reviewing it?
possible we would need to do a budget with and a budget embedded and a budget with them as separate accounts? Is that what you're saying?
No, we will have, now that I have access to the grant, they give you the amount of which you can receive. And
Okay.
so I will know at least how much money is initially allocated to us. Whether or
Okay.
not they come out and there's more money after the fact, like ESSER 2 was, or they release additional money, that will be outside of our control.
but we're gonna include everything that we've laid out in our
Correct.
plan.
It's already included in the
Because we've hired those
budget.
people and moved
Yeah.
forward.
Yes,
right.
it's already included in the budget. It's just a shell game of moving them to a different account.
Okay.
Is there any possibility that we wouldn't get all the money or that we'd be denied some of it?
No, worst case scenario is when you apply for the grant, one line item isn't approved or two items aren't approved, and you either need to revise to be in compliance, or you'll need to, and still allocate that money towards whatever you wanted, or if it's really doesn't apply, then you need to put that money towards something else. In regards to property tax, we did not receive any additional money in the month of June for property tax, and we will not receive any money. I confirmed that with the township treasurer this morning. So looking at property tax in both current year line items and prior year collection, we did collect 100.4% of what we budgeted for both of those line items. Moving on to the summary of expenditures on the next page.
Chris, and if we go back to property tax real quick.
Sure.
Did we adjust the budget yet for next year?
I did,
Property
yes.
tax? Okay.
I did in this, that's
Because we
the only thing
budgeted this past year at
that's
98, correct?
97,
97.
and I put in the
Yeah.
budget 99% because we
Okay.
will capture some of the money from this fiscal year as well as, the money from next fiscal year.
Okay.
I mean, I do think it will be slightly delayed. The next installment will be slightly delayed, it looks like, but that won't have a material impact on the budget.
Correct.
It's
It'll
good to have
just
a
be
fund balance.
Yes, because we have a fund balance, correct. The summary of expenditures, so it shows that the district has spent 98.2% of the budgeted expenditure items for the year. This amount is similar to this time last fiscal year. That also, does contribute to the surplus because we didn't spend as much money as we said we were going to. And then included for the board, just for your information, I always include the statement of revenue and expenditures, which list all of the accounts, as well as the budgeted amounts and what we spend, as well as student activity accounts. And then I have some other items as well to report out on. The first is the wellness incentive. Some of the older board members have heard me share this out earlier in the year, but we were just notified for the first time since the program existed, we have met all 3 tiers for the wellness incentive, which means that we've earned $18,621.45 for the district. And we met the requirements. Tier 1 is having 50% of your members that are enrolled in insurance participate in a wellness screening, and so we met that, and I shared that out earlier in the year, which is really impressive given COVID and trying to make people feel helping people feel comfortable to do that in October. Tier 2 was implementing a wellness program by meeting 6 different criteria and really having an action-based plan. One of the ways we did that was through the holiday hustle that you heard about earlier in the year. And then tier 3 is, achieving 65% or higher on the overall aggregate well-being score. That's a part of that wellness screening. So I'm really excited about that and wanted to share that with the board. And wanted to thank all of the teachers and staff members who participated in the wellness screening, because if you don't pass tier 1, you can't progress to tier 2 or tier 3. So I'm really grateful that they are taking an active role in their health. The next item is a follow-up from Ms. Zalis' request last board meeting. I wanted to share out the student fees collected for second semester in the past 3 years. You can see this year we collected $210,000 roughly, and that is similar to 2019.
Is that a screen? Can we put
Oh,
it up
sorry.
there?
This would go back to
11,
the first
the end of
page.
page
Yeah.
11.
That's Mary Ann.
Thank
There
you.
go. Up a little bit.
So if you scroll up, you can see in 2021, this year, the other way, Marianne, you can see that we are at 210,000, and that is roughly similar to where we were in 2019. You can see the impact of COVID looking at 2020, and this is just for the second semester.
Thank you.
And then lastly, I've been keeping track of COVID-related expenditures and sharing out with the board on a quarterly basis. Marianne, this is on page 31, please. So if you scroll down to the bottom, you'll see that the district spent $907,492 on COVID-related expenses, with the majority being spent on, as we previously talked about, food service, which was $416,516, $312,127 on staffing to keep security staff members and paraprofessionals full-time as we were working half-day schedules with students in the building. $56,604 on buildings and grounds-related items. A majority of this were PPE-related items, shields, face masks, things of that nature. And then $68,000 roughly on technology. And that concludes my report for tonight. Are there any additional questions?
And that is in addition to what we spent at the end of 2020 related to COVID.
Correct.
Just to be clear, this was the FY21 expenditure. So although we're sitting in a better place now with the budget, we certainly had some expenditures that were unanticipated.
So because of COVID, we got about 1.7 million through grants, but we spent about 900,000 just on we would not have spent any of this money had we not had the epidemic and the issues that we had, correct? Are these strictly
Correct, about like
correct?
412,000 that's on that
Yeah.
list was made up in reimbursements in that federal grant. I mean,
Yeah,
but yes, you're correct. Some of this did balance out, some of it did not.
okay.
So, any more questions, comments? Thank you.
You're welcome.